A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. Glad you're with me on the program today. We're going to be talking with Toby Leary of Cape Gun Works out in Hyannis, Massachusetts, about the latest on Chapter 35, the sweeping anti-gun bill that the gun owners actually think is calling the devil's snare. I like that. Don't like the bill itself. Hate the provisions in the new law that are subjecting gun owners to all kinds of infringements. But gun owners are fighting back in Massachusetts, and we'll talk with Toby about that in just a moment. Before we do, though, let's talk about this for a second. Economists are warning us about massive tax hikes that could hit your IRA and 401k hard. With inflation rising and global uncertainty, it is no wonder that central banks and many Americans are turning to gold. If you haven't thought about gold yet, now's the time. Trust Priority Gold to help you diversify your savings with gold and silver. Text GOLD into 800-405-GOLD for a free gold info guide and see if you qualify for free shipping and storage. Experts agree physical gold is one of the best ways to fortify your savings. Act now to get your portfolio working for you while the market's golden. Text GOLD into 800-405-GOLD to learn more. That's golden to 800-405-GOLD. All right, now let's turn our attention to our conversation with Toby Leary from Cape Gun Works. The last time I talked with Toby was just before the August 1st deadline where Chapter 35 ostensibly took effect, although now many of these provisions have been pushed back until October. And when I spoke to Toby at the time, he said he had never seen anything like the run on guns that his store was witnessing. Hundreds of customers every day coming in because the way the law was written, it looked like on August 1st or August 2nd, it was basically going to be impossible to buy any long guns in the state of Massachusetts. Now that has sort of been kicked back to late October. As you'll hear from Toby, there is still a lot of concern and confusion about the impact of this law and what it means to the right to keep and the right to bear arms in the state of Massachusetts. Take a look and a listen. Toby, thanks very much for coming on the show, sir. It's good to see you.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for having me, Cam. Your show is awesome. I'm a big fan. I read your articles. I watch your videos and love what you do for the 2A community. So,
wow, I really appreciate that. And I appreciate everything you're doing up there in Massachusetts. The last time we talked was, I guess, late July. It was a couple of days before Chapter 35 took effect. And at the time, you were experiencing a run on guns. You said you had never seen anything like this before because, well, explain to me why folks were so concerned that they weren't going to be able to buy anything come August 1st.
Yeah, the amount of misinformation around this is incredible, number one. Number two, there is actually real teeth to this law that, this isn't just your grandfather's gun ban. This is a new uncharted waters where, we've already been living under the 94 assault weapons ban. Then in 2016, our Attorney General, Maura Healey, who's now governor, did this enforcement notice, and we had a big run that day on July 20th, 2016, where people weren't going to be able to buy ARs and AKs after that date, even though they were sold for 10 years throughout the country, just in a modified state. She's now redefining what a copy or duplicate is and everything else. So basically saying any variation, regardless of the features it has, wouldn't be able to be sold. And then fast forward to last week when we spoke, they have now added to the copy or duplicate language and the evil features. So the evil features now include a handguard, a thumbhole stock, a vertical pistol grip, in addition to all the other ones which we were already living under, like the bayonet lugs, grenade launchers, and such. So really, it boils down to a very narrow sliver of semi-automatic rifles that we'll be able to own in Massachusetts or buy going forward. So stuff like the Ruger Ranch rifle without a pistol grip, or the Ruger PC carbine or a M1 carbine, that type of thing would be able to be owned or purchased prior. But as soon as you have a vertical foregrip and a detachable mag and a handguard, that's one too many. So people were like, forget this. I'm going out to get what I want. while I can. And this all happened very quickly. The law was introduced last summer. It was, put on hold until the fall, and then it was voted in by the House. And then the Senate came out with their own version, which was a replacement of the language of the House. They had a war over that, ended up in conference committee, and it dropped on July 17th out of conference committee at 6 or 8 p.m., I think is when we first saw the language.
Mm-hmm.
It was voted by both houses, by both the House and the Senate the next day, with no one read it. It's 116 pages long. And then it was signed into law a week later. So it was crazy.
And you just talked about the new rules for quote unquote assault weapons, which is hard enough to understand. But there was another issue too, right? As I understand it, Massachusetts defined firearm previously as just handguns, basically, right? So long guns weren't defined as firearms until this new law, which now means that every long gun, rifle and shotgun, has to be, I guess, tested and certified by the state before it can get on a roster to be approved for sale.
Yeah, you're 100% right on this. And this is the sneaky one that they were either extremely intelligent by doing this if they really want to ban all guns, or they're just dumb, which I think it was more the latter. And they didn't realize by redefining firearm that it would be subject to this roster. So I honestly do believe it was an oversight on their part, not knowing the nuance of what a firearm is. And so by redefining it as a rifle and a shotgun as a firearm, it's subject to our approved firearms roster. That means as of October 24th, we won't be able to sell any long gun, lever action, bolt action, single shot, it doesn't matter the configuration, until they, as you pointed out, they get sent for testing. But it's even worse than that, because the testing is specifically designed for handguns. So now you're going to subject some Remington 870 pump shotgun to the same test as handguns. It doesn't make sense, number one. Number two, it's not going to work. And number three, what manufacturer is going to spend? This is literally the process. It's like $10,000 to send one model of gun for testing, and you got to send 5 guns of each model to be tested that are going to be destroyed in the process and not sent back. So, and I think you fund the ammunition costs associated with it. So, the testing laboratory gets a check for 10 grand per model, and then they destroy 5 of your guns. And then if it passes, they add it to the list. So you want to talk about, what manufacturer is going to spend millions and millions of dollars to test all their guns? It's not going to happen. Maybe they'll do 1 or 2,
right, but
we'll be severely limited. And so this is a massive ticking time bomb coming our way on October 24th.
And you didn't realize it was going to be October 24th until when? Because originally, the way this law is written, the effective date was August 1st, maybe August 2nd. And then it wasn't until either July 31st or August 1st that the state police basically said, okay, hang on, we're going to hold off on enforcement until October 24th, right?
Yeah. So it's very confusing for everybody, but August 1st is the date really of the cutoff date of when you can sell or own a new assault style weapon. So really, if it wasn't in the inventory of the FFL or already in the state being owned by a licensee, then I can't, in other words, call up RSR and get 100, SIG Spears tomorrow, because the cutoff date was August 1st. So that was kind of the grandfathering date of the assault style weapons, but the law itself doesn't take effect until 90 days after the governor signs it. So that was the confusion. And the state police kind of preemptively put out a letter to all of us instructors and said, hey, you better warn your students that the courses they're taking now might not qualify them to get an LTC. We just don't know, but you got to warn them. And we're like, what? So Gun Owners Action League and COM2A simultaneously sued the state. And they backed off and said, okay, yeah, I can't really enforce a law that's not a law until October 23rd. So, but the rest of this bill, and there are other dates involved, like the Mass State Police has like a year and a half to get certain things integrated into the bill. So, like, how do you enforce that? How do you get licensed? How do you, put certain parts of this law into effect if they have a year and a half to develop what it looks like? It's just a total blivid of seismic proportions. There's no win scenario for the state or for the gun owner.
Yeah, I mean, this is absolute madness. And, and again, I mean, you bring up the training aspect of this, too, which is a whole other issue, right? Because, again, the state police are supposed to write this curriculum. I guess they say it's going to be done by October 23rd. But then what does that mean for instructors? So, once the curriculum is written, do you have to then be certified by the state to teach this new curriculum? I mean, what's that process look like?
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to grandfather all of us in that are already currently certified instructors for the state, or if they're going to make us go through residual training. I am under the impression there's a whole new module of training that's going to have to come out. We have to teach stuff like de-escalation techniques now, just for your basic LTC class. We're going to have to teach about the new gun laws and how they pertain to the prospective gun owner. So there's a whole new module of training that has to come out. And is this going to be ready? By the way, this is an unfunded mandate. There was no dollar amount tied to this. There's no budgetary carve out to fund any of this. So they're basically telling state police, hey, you got to do this, come up with the resources internally to do this. And they're probably like, where are we coming up with that? You're already cutting our budgets year over year. So, okay. So there's a whole bunch of stuff involved with that, I just see this blowing up and being hashed out in courts for years to come. And I don't see any other way around it personally.
Yeah. And I think you're right, unfortunately. And, listen, I think even if, given the politics at the State House, even if they had, written this bill in regular order, they had public hearings, we'd still be talking about a bill that was extremely problematic in terms of our constitutional rights. But right. The way that they did this, as you say, crafting this bill behind closed doors in a conference committee, then releasing it, voting on it the very next day without lawmakers really having a chance to read what's in it. Because, I want folks to understand, if you look at, and I've had to look at a lot of pieces of legislation over the years, Massachusetts, the way you guys write your bills, or the way lawmakers write their bills there, it's one of the most confusing things I've ever seen, because you literally have to have the statute book in front of you. And you have to look line by line. Okay, what's changed? It's not easy to understand when you're just reading the text of the bill. So that's not something that, even if you're a speed reader and you can, zoom through 113 pages of legislation, you still don't understand, because you still have to go back and look at, okay, what does this mean? What does this change? What's staying the same? And I think that's a huge problem, because I suspect that you're right. In Occam's razor, I think it's Occam's razor, right? That says never attribute to malice what can be attributed to stupidity or ignorance. And I think that that's probably what was the case, at least for some of the people who voted in favor of this bill. Now, as for Representative Michael Day and the architects of this legislation, I don't know. I think a lot of this stuff may have been intentional. But the bottom line is, you've now got this completely unworkable piece of legislation. And it seems like in many ways, the state police and maybe even, other agencies are just sort of making it up as they go along now.
Yeah. And I think, like, if the law of unintended consequences comes to fruition, in other words, if they say, hey, we didn't intend to make it so you can't sell pump shotguns, so don't worry about that. Like, just go ahead and sell them. Now they're telling us to break the law. And if we can break the law with that portion of the bill, why aren't we breaking the law for the rest of it? Right. So I don't know how that's going to play out. Maybe they'll do some emergency amendment to the bill and say, just kidding, we messed up. But I highly doubt that. And you're right about the architects of this bill. I do believe that it is much more nefarious than, is really put out there in the public eye. In fact, there's a lot of the legislators that are doing a victory lap right now about, we passed this massive piece of gun legislation, and the reason we did it is because of Bruin. So basically they're saying, hey, this is in response to those activist judges out there that are trying to ensure people have the right to keep and bear arms without our permission. And I think that's a serious problem, because they're literally conspiring to defraud us of our right to keep and bear arms. And they're doing it in a way that makes them break their oath of office by, instead of being the confidential guarantors of our rights, as Madison said the legislature is supposed to do, they have now taken offense against our rights and broke their oath of office in doing so. And I think that is malfeasance. I think that is fraud in the inducement. If you did that in the business world, you would be sued and held personally and severably liable, and probably held to treble damages. But when the legislature does it, they take a victory lap and say, we're trying to keep our kids safe, and we're just making our communities stronger, all the while lying, as you know, about the statistics around that. So I think that the nefarious aspect of this is deep, and it is dark, and it is to root out the right to keep and bear arms from our American way of life. And certainly here in Massachusetts, they've taken a quantum leap ahead in doing that, plus knowingly spending the taxpayer money for the next 10 years in legal challenges.
Right. Looking back at my Massachusetts history, after the Boston Tea Party, the British Parliament passed a series of laws. They called them the coercive acts, but the colonists called them the intolerable acts. And they basically said, we're going to punish you, right? We're going to punish the colony of Massachusetts for the acts of these, Tea Party patriots. They shut down the legislature, said, you can't meet without royal approval. They shut down the Port of Boston. And again, the idea was, we're going to coerce these citizens into compliance here because we don't like what they've done. And I get that same sort of feeling here, right? You talk about the reaction to the Bruin decision. Well, we don't like what the Supreme Court did, so we're going to take it out on the citizens of Massachusetts. We're going to show them who's boss. We're going to show them who has the power. And it's not a right to keep and bear arms. It's a privilege that is doled out by the state. That's the way the Second Amendment works in Massachusetts, right? You basically, you don't start with the right to keep and bear arms. You have to prove yourself worthy to exercise that right.
Oh, 100% right. And, I make that same type of comparison a lot about how the modern legislature here in Massachusetts is literally picking up where King George III left off when he sent his redcoats to march on Lexington and Concord. They're trying to finish his work by depriving the citizens of their right to keep and bear arms, all the while trying to tell us it'll make us safer in the process. And here's a perfect example of the results of the Boston Tea Party that you just so eloquently laid out. We are doing a ballot referendum, or a recall of this bill. It's a grassroots effort to recall the bill. And if we get 49,713 signatures that are certified prior to October 23rd, this bill will be suspended until the next biennial election, which is in 2026. So this is the grassroots, the people getting upset, saying no, and we're going to get involved. And this is how the people can get activated. Well, just yesterday, the governor said, I've heard about this, and I might sign a emergency preamble retroactively that'll eliminate the people's voice and make it so that the bill can't be suspended. It can still go on the ballot in 2026, but you can't put the bill on ice if I sign this emergency preamble. And so the party that's always decrying the threats to democracy is now literally trying to silence the people and make it so that they can't get involved in the constitutional process to preserve their right to keep and bear arms.
Yeah, that is so screwy. I was talking with Jim Wallace on the phone about this yesterday afternoon, and I knew that that there was that emergency preamble that the governor could sign that would allow the law to be enforced instead of being suspended. But I didn't realize that she didn't include that emergency preamble when she signed the bill originally. That now she wants to go back and apply that retroactively, which, I mean, again, to me, it's kind of squirrely that the chief executive would be able to remove that provision simply by, tacking on a emergency preamble to begin with. But as Jim said, it's unheard of to do that after the fact, right? It's one thing to do it when the bill gets to her desk and then you sign it and okay. But to go back and to say, well, now that this is being challenged, I'm going to go back and, sign this preamble so that the law can't be suspended, because if they do get these, almost 50,000 signatures, well, we want to make sure that the law is still being enforced. Again, I mean, I go back to just the idea that they're making it up as they go along. How do you know how to comply with the law? How do you know how to challenge the law if they're changing the rules in the middle of the game?
It's what they're good at. When one of the challengers to this law spoke up on the floor of the House the day they voted for it, they said, you know what, there's a problem here. I think it's Rule 10 or Rule 13, that you can't pass an unfunded mandate. And so immediately he sits down, and then a motion is started to suspend the rules. So they don't say, oh, yeah, you're right, let's go back to the drawing board and put some funding in this. Let's just suspend the rules so that we can vote on it, which they did. It's like, these are rules for thee and not for me, is really what the message is. And they'll do whatever they want. They'll go full tyrant mode and threaten to put an emergency preamble in there. I think she hasn't done it because it creates a whole hornet's nest of problems for them to develop what the law looks like in short order, and they can't do that. So there'll be immediate court challenges to the constitutionality of the bill. So I think she's a little bit of saber rattling here. Mm-hmm. And I would make a prediction that if she's going to do it, she'll wait until after the election, I believe, on November 5th. Because if she does it now, that just kicked the hornet's nest again and gets people even more mad that they're trying to get involved in the constitutional process and try to silence the people's voice, if you will. But we'll see what happens. Because there's you said there's a late October deadline to gather these signatures, right? So if she, you want to talk about kicking a hornet's nest? Yeah, signing an emergency preamble after those signatures have been turned in. Oh, that would be even worse, Toby. I can't even imagine. But so what are, I guess that brings me to the next question is, how are the gun owners that you're seeing coming into Cape Gun Works? How concerned are they? Are they invigorated? Do they sound defeated? And are you and other gun stores around the state going to be helping to collect these signatures? Yeah, that's a great question. Everybody who comes in, first thing they do is they're looking around like for me, and then they make a beeline. How can I get involved? How can I help? What can I do? Where do I sign? Who can I get these petitions to sign? My friends and family and neighbors and, churchgoers and businessmen and whatnot. I have never seen such a buzz and such an excitement around the Second Amendment community in Massachusetts. A lot of times we're asleep at the wheel. And I would say we have been for the past year. Even when this got introduced, there was a moment of excitement, a rush up till the fall, and then into January when the Senate ended up voting, we could kind of reinvigorate that flame. But then everybody kind of went back to business as usual, because, if no news is, means you just go along your every day. And then this thing popped and it kicked off quick. Now people are really upset. They are wanting to do something. They're willing to donate. They're willing to get involved. They're willing to be a captain that can, facilitate the signature drives. They're willing to be, organized on the county level. And also there's lots of places like Cape Gun Works and other gun stores and sportsmen's clubs that are all like, we will be a destination for people to come sign. So that's really exciting. But yes, we're going to definitely be a destination. You can come sign the petition as soon as it's generated by the state. And it's not out yet. We're still waiting. But as soon as it comes out, we will kick that off into high gear. And we'll try to get a donate link up, because this is going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars at a minimum to do it right. And we have a short window of opportunity to get it done.
Yeah, and this is, by the way, you talk about you're waiting to get those petitions back from the state. This is another area in which the state can kind of play some games here, right? Goal
Yep.
sent out an alert yesterday talking about the Massachusetts Attorney General, Andrea Campbell. She's the one who has to basically certify that this petition is valid. As Goal says, it's a very simple determination that the Attorney General should be capable of discerning in a few minutes. Instead, the Attorney General's office has sought guidance on the matter from a host of outside sources, many of which likely had a hand in writing the new law. So rather than just look at this petition and say, okay, yeah, this complies with Article 48 of the Constitution, she's asking opinions from the Massachusetts Chiefs of Police, from the Fraternal Order of Police, from the Massachusetts Coalition to Prevent Gun Violence, from Everytown, from Giffords, from Brady United. I mean, why are you asking gun control groups whether or not this petition complies with the Massachusetts state constitution? They don't know. They're not experts on the Massachusetts state constitution. And Goal says, I talked to Jim again about this yesterday. He said, I think that the AG is looking for an excuse to deny this petition and looking for cover to deny this petition.
There's no question about it. And I'm a layperson, I'm not a lawyer. But when I read what is able to be challenged through this type of a recall and what isn't, this bill isn't one that, it's like it's usually around religion or budget or a personal vendetta against an official. It isn't like just an average bill or any type of bill that's, a public safety or something like that. That doesn't come into play. So it's pretty plain to someone like me. I'm like, what am I missing here? How can she even be putting this out to, these other people's opinion? Of course, Brady's going to say, no, you can't do that. But
right.
they, what is that? What kind of weight does that carry? Are they constitutional scholars of mass constitutional law? I doubt it, And so it's it's definitely strange that she sent that out.
I mean, it is weird. And at the very least, what this does, I mean, because as Jim said, this should be a matter of minutes for her to look at the petition and say, yes, it meets the statutory provisions. And that gets the ball rolling in terms of getting you guys the petition so you can start collecting signatures. But if she's waiting for a week or two for all of these, supposed stakeholders to weigh in, well, the clock's already ticking, right? You've got that October 29th deadline to submit these signatures. Regardless of when the Attorney General gets back and says, okay, here are the forms, you can start collecting those names now. She could wait 2 or 3 weeks. She could wait 6 weeks. All right. Because there's nothing in statute that says she has to get this done by a particular time. So, again, this is revealing not just the hostility towards the right to keep and bear arms in Massachusetts, but it really, I think, is showing the contempt that so many lawmakers have for these citizens of Massachusetts, particularly the civically engaged citizens who are paying attention to what's going on in Boston, who do want to play an active role in self-government. You guys, right. I mean, you guys are getting smacked around because I think you care about what's happening in your state.
100%. And one of the things they don't like to hear, but I've begged them to show me in constitutional law where they're granted privilege to erode our rights or infringe upon our rights in any way, shape, or form. Second Amendment, First Amendment, Fourth Amendment, whatever you want to call it. And according to our state constitution, all citizens are granted the right to keep and bear arms for the common defense, period. That's 1780. That's before the Second Amendment was ratified in 1791. So where does the executive and the legislative branch get the privilege to take away, infringe, or put some sort of conditions or put a lien on our right to keep and bear arms? No one has ever been able to show me where they're granted that privilege. And Madison wrote in Federalist 49 that there is something called constitutional limits or limitations. And it's Congress's job to be those confidential guardians of our rights. They are sent there to protect us of our rights. But instead of being guardians, they have become oath breakers, and they feel that they are the grantor of rights, which is totally antithetical to what our founding documents say. And so they know. I have this funny story I tell, Cam, called when you go to a high school or a college hockey game and the visiting team commits a penalty and the ref is skating them over to the penalty box, the student section always jumps on their feet, pounds on the glass, and yells, "You can't do that." That's exactly what my message has been to Congress this whole time is you can't do this. And the fact that you do it anyway because you have the authority, you have the power, is by definition abuse of power. So you lack the constitutional authority, but you do it anyway, and that's called abuse of power. So you're abusing your power by infringing upon our rights. And they don't like to hear that. So they're going to go full tyrant mode and try to silence us and try to take the constitutional process away from us. But we're going to fight. So that's what we're doing.
Well, listen, I am at least encouraged to hear that gun owners are energized, that they're not asleep at the wheel anymore. Anything we can do, here at Bearing Arms and Cam and Company to help spread the word. You've got an open invitation. You just let me know when you want to come back and talk about the latest. We're talking with Jim Wallace. We're talking with Nolan Howard and other firearms instructors. So this is definitely on our radar, and we want to make sure that every gun owner in the state of Massachusetts gets the message and knows what they can do to stand up in support of their rights. And again, Toby, thank you for everything you're doing, man. I really do. You're making a difference.
Thanks, Cam. I appreciate it. And if everyone would, if you could just get the word out for our August 24th is the big kickoff party on Boston Common. We have a huge rally scheduled there, and I'm hoping we have the petitions to sign that day. That would be a great first, gathering point to start getting the signature drive done. So August 24th at 10 a.m. A lot of good speakers lined up. I'll be speaking there as well. And I can't wait for it. It's going to be a great day. And thanks for all you're doing for freedom. And we're behind the lines. We're fighting because this thing spreads like a disease across the country, like a plague. And we got to stop it where the fight is. And the fight's right now and and we're the ones in it. So we better stay and do our job.
Absolutely. Toby, thanks again for coming on the show, man. We'll talk again very soon.
Anytime. Thanks, brother.
Thanks to Toby for joining us on the program today. We're going to be talking with Nolan Howard next Monday about this rally coming up on the 24th. I would love to be able to say that I could be there. I don't know that that's going to be the case, but we will definitely be there in spirit, and we will be doing everything we can to let folks know about that rally on the Boston Common at the bandstand, I believe, in the Boston Common again on August 24th at 10 a.m. All right, before we turn to today's armed citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report, let's talk about this for a second. With the volatility from the election and national debt breaking $35 trillion for the first time ever, there has never been a better time than now to consider physical gold or silver as a way to protect your savings. If this election goes sideways, there's a good chance that things are going to get even worse. And the good news is that there's something you can do right now ahead of whatever future chaos might be coming. Wealth Protection Research has found a gold partner in Sasco Gold that specializes in helping everyday Americans protect their retirement accounts, like 401ks, IRAs, or TSPs, using a loophole that allows them to convert into physical gold or silver, tax and penalty free. You can find out more when you text the word TRUTH to 76626. That's right. You can break free from your captive retirement account and enjoy the peace of mind knowing that your retirement savings now stored in physical gold and silver that you control. If you're interested in learning the truth about how you can protect your retirement with gold and silver, you can get a free gold investment kit that explains it all from Sasco Gold just by texting TRUTH to 76626. Drew from Sasco standing by waiting to help. When you text TRUTH to 76626, just tell Drew that Cam sent you. And for your free gold investment kit, again, text TRUTH to 76626 now. All right, turning to today's recidivist report from the website CWB Chicago, which honestly, I feel bad because I could find a story from Chicago every day. But I do like to spread the, I don't know if wealth is the right word to use, spread the manure around a little bit and highlight, these issues from other parts of the country. But this one was just so egregious, I couldn't help but cover it. Man on probation, carjacked family, ages 5 to 76, at gunpoint, according to prosecutors. This was back on July 25th in the 9100 block of South Crandon, when CBB Chicago says a gunman pointed a firearm at this family in Calumet Heights, took control of the 76-year-old woman's 2018 BMW X5 on 4:45, broad daylight, on July 25th. According to prosecutors, the would-be carjacker said, "Give me the keys or I'll shoot you." In addition to the car's owner, he also pointed the gun at other victims, a 38-year-old woman, a 5-year-old girl, boys ages 10 and 8. Police eventually located the carjacked BMW using license plate readers. They moved in. They located the vehicle. Suspect still behind the wheel at the time. He sped away, crashed into two parked cars. And then 18-year-old Daryl Haynes Davis allegedly bolted from the car while it was still rolling. Officers caught up to him nearby, allegedly found a loaded handgun on the hijacked BMW's floorboard. Now, at age 18, Daryl Haynes Davis is not old enough to legally purchase a handgun in the state of Illinois. Judge David Kelly detained Haynes Davis, noting in his detention order that the 18-year-old is on juvenile probation for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, as well as attempted fleeing or eluding, which, sounds a lot like what he's accused of on July 25th. So here's the question. Why did this 18-year-old receive nothing more than probation when, as a juvenile, he allegedly committed a violent crime? And I think the answer, of course, is that this is Chicago we're talking about, where State's Attorney Kim Fox, the Cook County State's Attorney, has a reputation for going soft on violent criminals. But, of course, Democrats in Illinois have also a earned reputation of going hard on legal gun owners, which, again, begs the question, is this really about public safety? Are these gun control efforts really about public safety? Or is it really, again, about trying to denormalize and vilify the exercise of a fundamental civil right? All right, on to today's armed citizen story. And I confess, I missed this one at the time, but this is such a great story. I had to cover it here. This is from the Detroit area. Neighbor pulls gun on domestic violence suspect seen dragging woman into home. Now, obviously, the underlying crime here, not so great. But what is, I think, worth noting is the fact that this armed citizen intervened and saved this individual. This was on August the 4th. Officers were called out Sunday afternoon to a home in Albion, Michigan, for a reported domestic violence incident. When they arrived, they found a woman with bruises and cuts on her body and her face who had run to a neighbor's house for help after she allegedly been beaten up and tied up by a man that she was dating. She says she was been assaulted by her boyfriend starting on Saturday night, when he began beating her and then tied her up to keep her inside the home. It wasn't until Sunday afternoon that she was able to escape, and then she ran to that neighbor's home for help. The neighbor told officers he pulled his gun on the suspect after he saw the man assaulting the woman near his home and was trying to drag her back inside the house. The man let her go and ran away after the neighbor produced his firearm, and that's when the woman was ushered inside the neighbor's home. The neighbor then calls 911. Officers entered the suspect's home, found two children, ages 9 and 11, who were hiding in the basement. Police searched the area for the suspect, couldn't immediately find him. It wasn't until the next day, about 5 o'clock Monday, August 5th, when police received a tip from the public about where the suspect could be located. He was arrested without further incident, taken to the Calhoun County Jail to await charges. And again, what was already a terrifying situation. I don't want to minimize what this woman went through. But at least she wasn't taken back into that home. And God knows what would have happened had he been able to drag her inside. So thankfully, again, that armed citizen was in a position to intervene, to stop that horrific crime from escalating any further. And again, no national news coverage of that, as compelling a story as it is, right? A one-day mention in the Detroit press, and the news cycle has moved on. And again, I missed it at the time, but I think this is definitely a story worth talking about. Finally today, in the right place, at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing. Group of neighbors in Toledo, Ohio, who came to the aid of a child who was drowning in a Toledo pool. This was on Monday at the Roosevelt pool. Apparently the pool had already shut down for the day, but a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old rode their bikes to the pool, climbed the fence, and then took a swim. And the problem is one of the kids couldn't swim. The 11-year-old went into the pool, sank to the bottom. His 9-year-old cousin ended up running for help. One woman who was in the area spoke to WTVG in Toledo. She didn't want to give her name, so we don't know the identity of these good Samaritans, but she said, the little boy's yelling at me like, and I'm like, where's he at? How many is it? I don't know what's going on. She said she was one of the first people to get to Roosevelt Pool on Monday. She said The baby, meaning the 11-year-old, was at the bottom in the fetal position, no bubble, no ripples in the water. She said she and two other individuals did everything they could before the police got there. They got the child out of the water. She said, we tried to save the baby. One of the other neighbor kids who was in the area said he and his brother were walking home, saw some kid yelling for help. He said, I ran home, told my mom somebody was yelling at the pool. And then again, adults got involved. The 11-year-old is in the hospital. So there was a pulse. Police described the 11-year-old in critical condition as of Monday anyway. So your thoughts and prayers, I'm sure, would be appreciated by the family. But again, in the right place, at the right time, willing able to do the right thing. Neighbors coming together to help save this 11-year-old. And, again, it would have been so easy for those individuals to say, hey, listen, I don't have the experience. I don't know what to do. And simply to freeze up. Or to call 911 and say, I'm just going to wait for the first responders. There are some times where we have to be the first responders. And those neighbors really stepped up in a terrifying situation. So a tip of the cap to them. And again, hopefully a recovery for that 11-year-old there in the hospital in Toledo. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. I want to thank you for being a part of the program as always. Tomorrow on the show, we're going to be talking with my friend Carl Higbee from Newsmax. He was one of the named plaintiffs in this challenge to New York City's prohibition on non-resident concealed carry, the emergency rule now promulgated by the NYPD that theoretically anyway allows for non-residents to get a concealed carry. The new emergency rule also deals with handgun registration permits, right, to keep a handgun in your home. So in addition to talking with Carl about the right to carry aspect of this, we're also going to be talking with New York attorney Amy Bellantoni about the other licensing provisions for New York residents who want to have a handgun inside their home, because that's been a challenge all on its own, and this emergency rule implicates that procedure as well. So we're gonna have a twofer for you with Carl Higbee and Amy Bellantoni on tomorrow's Cam & Company. I would encourage you to check that out. Also encourage you to check out BearingArms.com throughout the day today. We're keeping you up to date on all of the latest Second Amendment news and information. And if you like what you see, you can always become a VIP or VIP Gold member. Just use the promo code SAVEAmerica. You'll get exclusive content on your on your visits to BearingArms.com. You'll get an ad-free experience, but you'll also be supporting the independent pro-segment journalism that we're doing at BearingArms.com. And in this day and age of big tech censorship and rampant media bias, your support is not just appreciated, but it is desperately needed. So thank you again for everything that you're doing to support us here at Bearing Arms. Look forward to seeing you back here again tomorrow. Until then, be well, be safe, and be free.